Hey, Brian, how's everything going today?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
No, you're very welcome. I'm excited for our conversation because you first reached out to me on Facebook, I guess just a couple weeks ago, right before our spring virtual conference, and you had noticed that on the schedule we had a panel that we had titled "Personal and Professional Development Through Friendship," and you were like, "I'm your guy. I'm your guy." You were just so excited about that conversation. I felt terrible to tell you that conversation was based around some friendships I had made in the industry, and we were going to essentially reflect on the value of our experiences. But in turn, you had shared that your entire brewery was essentially built on friendship, and that just made my mind so curious. I wanted to hear the story and hear about the friendships that essentially built your brewery, aptly titled Friendship Brewing.
Well, thank you, and don't feel bad about when I reached out. Um, yeah, and I think we both know that it's an industry wide dynamic for the most part, and that's one of the reasons I'm in this industry. So yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't participate in that, but maybe I can expand on it or just add to the story, nationally.
Yeah,
Um,
I think today's conversation can be really important to hear about, how you created it and how you're still succeeding working with friends. Because I know in a lot of places, it's a challenge when you work with some of your closest friends, but apparently you've made it work. And let's dive into that today.
Yeah, and not without hiccups. I mean, we've had some friends come and go, quite frankly. But the core group is here. We love each other. We're family, and the collaborative aspect. We're a sum of our parts, and we all bring different valuable pieces to the big puzzle, and the big puzzle is working.
Absolutely. No, Brian, you're in Wentzville, Missouri, but I take it, is that where you grew up or did you grow up somewhere different?
No, for the most part, I did grow up here, and that's kind of why I gravitated back to my hometown, my home community. But I've been very fortunate to travel pretty extensively, and we'll probably touch upon the biggest reason I probably own a brewery is time I spent overseas, um, and you know there's no place like home. I've been around the world. Been a lot of cool places, but at the end of the day, my family's here. They're getting older. I'm helping take care of parents and stuff, and it just made sense to be back in my hometown.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to dive into that. And I know we're going to talk about your journeys overseas in a moment,
Yeah.
but I have to ask you, when you were just a kid, if we had met on the playground and I had asked you what you want to be when you grow up, what would 10-year-old Brian have said at that point in time in your life?
It would not have been brewery owner. Not that I didn't. My dad was a home brewer when I was born, so I probably breathed my first breaths in a way that launched me on this path. But at 10 years old, I was a kid. I wanted to play with my trucks and ride my motorcycle, and I wasn't even chasing girls yet. So, this was not on the radar, not on in the script, and that really holds true. You know, until 15 years ago or so. I went to school for architecture. Worked in a corporate job in that realm for most of my career, and sounds like we'll have an opportunity to touch on what caused that shift in my life to land where I am now.
So when you first went to college, because you obviously went for architecture and those things, where did you end up going?
I went to Kansas State University in Kansas, which at the time was might have been number one. It's always been pretty highly regarded for architecture, and it's nearby, so that was helpful. And also, I was able to get in-state tuition, which was super helpful. And that was a twofold reason why this particular brewery exists. I had the opportunity to spend some time in London and drank a lot of English, Scottish, Irish, German, and Belgian beers. And when I came back to Manhattan, Kansas, and my buddies handed me Keystone Light, I just couldn't do it. My palate was forever changed. I had enjoyed so much, depth of character with beer flavor profiles. Um, it's not often a college kid will leave a free keg party, uh, but I did. I said, guys, I got to go do something different. I went to in Manhattan, Kansas. The exotic opportunities at that time were, I think I got a Foster's or a Moosehead or Lowenbrow maybe. But I had to have some flavor, and that launched homebrewing. So I had a friend at college that felt the same way. That was obviously pre-internet, so we did the cool old mail order catalog thing. And our first beer was a kind of an English brown ale.
So before you started homebrewing, you went over to London. Like, how far along in college were you when you made the semester overseas?
It was early. It was well, not early. I think third year, so the equivalent of kind of a sophomore junior. It's a 5-year degree, so um, kind of not quite in the middle. Um, but prior to that, as a young man, I certainly drank beer, probably when I shouldn't have. But again, my dad was a home brewer, so I liked good beer for what was available at any given time. But yeah, being exposed to those traditional European styles made a huge difference.
Was the adventure overseas, was it primarily to study? Were you at a university while you were over there, or what was your
Yes,
actual goal?
I was taking classes and probably not attending them as well as I should have, but I still got good grades. Um, but yeah, it was just really a great opportunity to be in a different culture. I also expanded my food preferences quite a bit there. The neighborhood that I was in had a lot of ethnic food, and that was great. So yeah, I came back a pretty changed person, and to this day, I'm very thankful for that opportunity. It obviously shaped my life a lot. So
Now, while you were in London, was there a certain moment where you realized, wow, this beer just blows my mind. I have to know more? Did you have that experience at a local pub that really was that fundamental in, shaping you?
yeah, it did, and it also greatly shaped the place I'm sitting. I was lucky enough to be near a pub that was the frequented hangout of the local postal workers. There was a big postal distribution point nearby, and it was fantastic. Not only did I learn about great beer, and I can expand on that, but I learned about a sense of community. Um, it was just a warm, inviting place. They welcomed me very warmly, treated me extremely well. Um, you know, Adopted me as their pet American for the most part, and we had great fun. I mean, I would reach for my wallet and oh no, and I'd get 5 pints set in front of me. Very generous, very kind people, and of different groups. I mean, old, young, great variety in terms of the demographic, and that's what I tried to recreate when we opened our first brewery
So,
location.
why did your friends at that pub decide to take you under their wings? What about you just screamed, I want to learn craft
Oh,
beer?
probably just being young and naive and being real willing to drink their beer. Um, but it was interesting because at that time, they were very inquisitive about things in America. And, by no means as a college kid was I an expert on,
Yeah.
all things America. But, they wanted to know about, I'm from Missouri, but they wanted to know about things that were happening in Hollywood, which I couldn't help them with. And, politics which as a young man, I was ambivalent about. Um, but we just had fun, and they were just nice people, and we laughed, and they taught me to play darts, which I was fairly good at the time. Just good people, just good sense of community, and they loved making fun of American beer, of Yankee beer. So I think they took pleasure in introducing me to their beers and their beer styles.
What were your favorites that you were introduced to during those months overseas?
That being in London, there was a lot of like Sam Smith's type stuff. They had a German beer on tap called Holsten, which I learned to like a lot. Um, of course, there was Guinness, there was Harp, there was the traditional, more commercial beers. But I also got to try some lesser known stuff, like I said, from Scotland, some Belgians that they weren't on draft, they were in bottles. Um, but prior to that, I hadn't had stouts, I hadn't had browns, I hadn't had porters. Um, and it was English IPA, but it was IPA nonetheless. So big, expansive moments for me, and formative to this day.
So one thing that fascinates me, and I bet it plays a role in your early days in college, but also your role at your brewery now, the educational component of craft beer. You talked about how they welcomed you into the community at the pub in London, but they obviously taught you things. What did they teach you about beer on the educational side that kind of made you feel a little more connected? Because we can taste the beer and it's delicious, but when you learn more about it and you learn more about the history and what goes into it, that's when you really start that relationship.
Oh,
What did you learn while you were in London that really just took it to the next level?
very much so. I mean, first of all, is just the willingness to be open-minded and to try the new things and not to be closed-minded about deviating from your comfort zone. And college kids are pretty open-minded, so I loved that part. And yes, they did have pride in their beers and their country and their communities, and were happy to explain to me, the histories of their beer styles. Porter is an example. I would not have known what that meant, and nor would I have known what IPA means. But nice folks helped me learn and enjoyed teaching me as much as I enjoyed learning. And yes, that does carry over to what we do here. When we opened 5 years ago, we're a suburb of St. Louis. We're about 35 miles west. So it's more of a bedroom community, more somewhat of a small town feel. So we felt like part of our job was to educate our community on what craft beer is and what craft beer means. So intentionally, we started with tap handles that were pretty approachable, pretty easy drinking, with the intent to, introduce bigger beers, and more exotic flavors and more experimental styles for their palates. And it's been fun. It's been really fun, and it's worked. We still have lots of folks that love a light lager or a basic blonde or a Heffy, but we've expanded our Belgians, we've expanded our barrel aging, and that's fun for us as well.
So I want to dive back into a little bit more about your home brewing days because we're going to go into the brewery in a little bit. Everybody knows that you've been there 5 years now. You're doing great things, but with regard to what got you there, Brian, so you got back from London. Did you start home brewing immediately, or when did when did you want to reach out to that catalog and place that first order?
It was pretty fast because I had dialogue with my friend that was having the same awakening, and he loved beers with bigger flavor profiles. So yeah, we started the journey pretty quickly, and back then the choices were pretty minimal. There was only a few beer styles, and it was liquid malt extract. It was very basic yeast opportunities. So, and our equipment was fairly rudimentary, but yeah, my memory is that within months we had placed that order and received our ingredients and our
Do
equipment.
you remember the company that you ordered it from?
Muntins, I think.
Was it? Yeah, sure.
Steve. Um, and I was joking with the TV person this morning. She's like, "Well, how'd you find all that?" And I think we found like an advertisement in the back of Rolling Stone magazine or something. I don't remember because we didn't have the internet. And we did, like everybody, just about. We bought the Joy of Homebrewing book by Charlie. And golly, it sure would have been cool to have YouTube back then, but we didn't. We read books, and for the most part, it worked. We didn't have any epic failures. Most of our beer was good. I mean, drinkable, at least to college kids and our friends. We didn't have any dumped batches. We didn't have anything terrible. We certainly had some that we liked better than others. But we just had fun, and that's the idea. Fun for us and fun for our friends.
And at this point in time, opening a brewery someday, was it on your radar at any point? Because every home brewer has that moment when you're brewing with your friends. Man, we could open one of our own someday. Was that something you talked about? And if you did, was it serious?
Early on, probably not, because this was in the late '80s, early '90s. So the real explosion of craft beer hadn't begun. There was a few of the old stalwart standbys that we all love, but back then it was, I just want to move on to my corporate career and have my life, and yeah, we'll make beer in our garage and have fun with it. It was in the middle 2000s where my first experience with that happened, and I was part of a homebrewing club, and we had a relatively small club, and I want to say like 5 of us now own commercial breweries. So,
Wow.
we actually said we'd do it, and we did it, which is fun. But yeah, you're right. I think 99.9% of a homebrewer population, especially if they have a few beers in them, think, oh man, I'm going to do it, and that's great, and it's fun. And, I'm very fortunate and thankful that I was able to follow through on that.
It's funny because when I first started, I've been homebrewing almost 15 years, I suppose. And early in those days, I guess I made a document on my computer and I labeled it the brewery name. And I had all these notes of what I wanted to do if I opened it. And I discovered this a couple weeks ago. And it was so funny to look at this document I created nearly a decade ago when I had the idea in the back of my mind. So, yeah, everybody has those moments. But you didn't have that moment early on because you went into your career as an architect. So, talk a little bit about, architect, such a broad term. What was your focus and what kind of projects did you help develop?
I actually specialized my last couple of years in landscape architecture. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, I left college and well, I did some internships like most, and then I graduated and I went to work for a pretty traditional design firm in St. Louis. Um, and like every beginner, I got put in a cubicle and I got told to do the basic stuff. And I worked for a fantastic mentor. He was fantastic, and stayed there for a couple of years. Was not getting paid particularly well, and I got an offer from a more of a developer, a company that built shopping centers and fast food restaurants. I had a kind of a friend of a friend that was there, and I left. I kind of went to the dark side. I left traditional architecture and went to a more of a real estate development construction firm, and was there for quite some time. Money was way better. It was not particularly satisfying as a designer because it was kind of cookie cutter, but at that point in time, that industry in our area was super hot. So we were real busy, did really well. But like a lot of businesses, 2007 and 8, we took a pretty hard hit when the economy got a little bit weird and banks stopped funding,
Sure.
real estate based projects. So, my phone kind of quit ringing, and it was a good run, but it was time to go. And that put me in a position where I had to redefine whatever the rest of my life was going to be. And ultimately that became Friendship. And part of the reason it's called Friendship is because, again, at the time, my friends greatly encouraged me to, Brian, do what you love. You love making beer. You love the beer world. Go do it. And thankfully we were able to do that.
So to throw a funny personal tidbit out there, I mentioned the brewery that I had, planned when I was just an early home brewer. We had potentially wanted to call that Wild Dedication Brewing Company. I think that goes very hand in hand with friendship because when you're really passionate about something, you throw everything behind it and you just run. So
yeah,
I respect that. I love it. So were you laid off or did just business get that slow that you knew this wasn't going to work long term?
Well, it just kind of fizzled out. I mean, our whole business premise was based on, funding big shopping center projects, and they just weren't happening. So, I didn't get fired. I didn't quit. I just kind of had to make the conscious choice to look somewhere else for my income. And I did some contract work. I went to work for some engineering firms, but that's the point at where the concept of a brewery really took root. I formed an LLC in 2010 with the brewery name, and then spent several years doing some fantastic research. I visited 486 breweries.
I always love it when the word research is used for
Yeah,
that.
R&D,
It's very true.
development or research and drinking. Either way, R&D. But yeah, I took it upon myself to really dive into what being a brewery is and what does it look like. And as you know, there's no set blueprint for what a brewery is or should be or can be. The variety is fantastic, and clearly it just is what works for you at your location. I went East Coast, West Coast, and in between. And some breweries are old barns, some are old buildings, some are strip centers, some are old homes, some are very industrial. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's what works for them. And, I saw a whole bunch of what I did want to do. I saw some things that I didn't want to do. I met untold gracious people that answered my dumb questions. I had some great experiences in camaraderie. I sat in a brewery in New England early on, and they had a great IPA, and I commented to the waitress, and she said, "Hold on a second." She went and grabbed the head brewer, and he came out and he wrote the the recipe on a napkin.
Wow.
Said, "You like that beer? Here it is." And as you know, because you're in the industry, he knew that I couldn't go home and reproduce his beer
Right.
the same way he does, nor am I going to impact his business in New England. But, that was one of the first indicators to me that this beats the heck out of, the corporate existence that I was in, which was pretty cutthroat often. And, I just wanted to make beer and hang out with people that like making beer and, be gracious about it. And it's working.
So you mentioned you visited over 400 breweries. Obviously that's a lot of time, that's a lot of travel, probably a bit of money as well. Were those 400 breweries over your life that you're referring to, or within just a few year period when you were doing this R&D?
I gave myself a 5-year window, and and I built into that, uh, some expenditure. That was part of the initial investment I made to get my brewery off the ground, was to, factor into the best of my ability my lack of income while I built out my brewery, because I didn't get a paycheck for 3 years. So yeah, I had to factor that in, but I felt like it was worth it. To this day, I feel very much that it was worth it, and I know everybody doesn't have that opportunity. I
That's an amazing opportunity. So were these trips like vacations where you'd go visit 20 breweries in a week, or were
yeah.
you married at the time? What was the vibe like for these trips where you had the opportunity to meet so many brewery owners and great people?
Well, and I have to laugh when I say this, or chuckle at least. Yeah, I probably couldn't do this if not for the fact that at the time I was single with no kids. So, I had no limitations on my time. Um, by taking these risks, I wasn't, jeopardizing somebody's college fund, or, I could roll the dice a little bit. Um, I had a little money to invest in this venture. Um, so, yeah, they were, for the most part, I tried to make them both fun and informative. I'm lucky that I have friends. The two main ones are in San Diego and Portland, Maine. So I would go there multiple times a year, and there's amazing breweries in both locations, and amazing breweries within striking distance of those, in different directions. Um, I also have great friends in Colorado. So, I had some pretty strong nodes to hit. I did a swoop through the South. Uh, you know, I did what I could, and um, so it was research with a purpose, but why not make it fun? So I did.
And when you mentioned earlier that you found some things you absolutely loved and you found some things at breweries you didn't quite like so much, feel free to name the brewery, but what's something that really impressed you that a brewery did really well outside of their beer?
Well, that's a wide ranging answer, and I'm not trying to sidestep it, but you know, it not only the beer. That's the important part, but the property. Like I said earlier, property is wide, so rangely in terms of what they look like, what they feel like. Vibe is a huge thing to me. I went to some breweries where the beer was amazing, but the location was underwhelming, and vice versa. I went to some places that were amazingly cool to be in, but the beer wasn't that great. So, I at least thought, well, I have to find that balance, and at least hopefully for my people, I want a cool place, but I also want great beer and a great vibe. I want people to feel good, like I did when I was in that pub in London. I want to feel good. I want my people to feel welcome, feel unfettered in terms of what they can do or say. So that's a big part of what I took notes on when I was there. But also to address your question, how does the brewery operate? How is it laid out? Where's the bar? Where's the production? Where's the bathrooms? I mean, goodness knows bathrooms are important. So, I tried to study it top to bottom, and then arrive at, what I felt like were what would ultimately work best in my location and my community. And
So the more you went to breweries, did you find yourself going in with more of a business mind rather than just as someone looking for a pint?
yeah. And I would try it, and I learned early on that I would research locations before I went by getting on their websites. And as you, I'm sure, know, I learned real quickly that the contents of a website don't necessarily tell you what the brewery is really all about.
There's
Some,
a lot of interesting websites in the beer world, to say the least.
yeah, and we're guilty of it too. You really got to be there. Great websites don't always convey, who you are and what you do, but that's where I started. And yeah, sometimes I would just see a particular beer that I was real interested in, or maybe, like I said, I'd see decor that I really wanted to investigate. Um, and then also see how those breweries fit into their neighborhood, because that's huge. How do they interact with the breweries near them? Because that's huge. And every chance I could, I would at least ask to talk to a person, in the hierarchy, whether it's the head brewer, owner, manager. And how it is. 99% of the time, I was successful and had some real nice person sit down and spend time with me, and that was invaluable. I mean, I can't tell you how much I learned from that. Again, whether it was in favor or not, as far as what my vision was, but helped tremendously. And I don't, how many other industries can you do that? Not many.
No, I love it. You talked a lot about the positives for the past couple of minutes. What about some negatives? Is there anything you saw in a brewery? You don't have to say the brewery name, of course, but you looked at that, you're like, oh my gosh, what were they thinking? Or just any part of the experience that you knew you did not want to recreate?
Yeah, sure. And yeah, we hate to denigrate other places, and we won't name names, but one, which is super important, is sanitation. Whether it was their brewing area or their place as a whole. What does it look like? Does it feel clean? Does it, are the beers clean? Um, and then other things I would just see logistically. If I felt like, parts of their operation were cumbersome, is it hard to get a beer? Obviously customer service. Did I get treated well? Did I get treated? Was I welcomed? Um, frankly, there's a lot of breweries. Maybe it's intentional, maybe it's not, but you go in and they're kind of arrogant. They're kind of indifferent. I didn't get that. I don't. That's not where I was coming from, but that happens. That was not my vibe, and not comfortable. And some are still out there. And maybe there's a cool kid factor that fits into, I guess. I'm too old to get that. Um, with a name like Friendship, we got to live up to it, and we do. But that was some negatives that, again, it also goes back to that pub I spent time in. If it didn't feel warm, both physically and I guess emotionally, it probably wasn't going to be somewhere I'd spend a lot of time.
No, I absolutely love that. So you get back home, you get back to Wentzville, and at this point in time, after you've done all your research, are you working on a business plan at this time? Do you have partners that are in it with you, or is it strictly you at this point?
No, I had a one friend that from college, and yeah, we had a business plan that had started emerging, early on. And like every business plan, you learn it, you grow it, you revise it. I had started the LLC. I had identified the old building we're in. Just that process took a couple of years to get that negotiated and purchased. It then took 29 months to renovate. Um, but yeah, once I got back from kind of the last of those trips, you know, you have to do all the uncomfortable stuff. You have to really sit down and dig in, and uh, of course identify your financial needs, and all the licensing issues and permitting issues, which are tedious to say the least, and more so when they were not all online. Um, so yeah, those were times you had to really do the nose to the grindstone thing.
And your college friend who was involved, what was his role in the business and what was his background?
Uh, Similar. We were in architecture school together. Did a lot of homebrewing together. He was a little bit a lesser financial investor, just because we had different means to do that. Um, and he spent about a year with us, and then we decided it was best to just go back to a traditional career. and that's fine. I mean, it's not for everybody. What we learned, and any brewery owner knows, is, and it kind of harkens back to what you and I joked about with every home brewer. Every home brewer, when they think, man, it'd be great I'm going to open a brewery. It'll be great. What most don't understand is it's not all fun and games. It's not sitting drinking beers with your buddies. Not very much. I work still about 80 hours a week, and
Wow.
90% of that has nothing to do with beer. And I don't think people realize that when they want to enter the industry. Beer is fairly predictable, as far as scheduling and time and allotment and the financials. The 90% is the business of beer and the business of your particular location, whether it's, staffing, fun things like insurance, obviously events, social media, paying bills. It's not beer per se. It could be applied to any product. It just happens to be beer for us. And, that particular partner, that wasn't his thing. He the demands and the stresses, weren't working. So since then, I've obtained another good friend that came on board and helps me a lot. I invited him this morning. He had something else going on. I'm the day-to-day everything. I'm the founder, but we can't do it without help. I mean, there's no way I could do this without a fantastic team. No.
So with your initial friend who joined in, why did he end up leaving? I know you said he didn't like the actual flow of it. Did it affect your friendship at any point?
Yeah, it did. There was strain, and that's unfortunate. But business is business. When you enter a business and make a substantial investment, you have to stay true to that. And I have no ill will. I hope he doesn't. But for the sake of the business, things had to move in a certain direction, and I needed things, in a timely manner and in a scheduled manner. And I was doing back then probably 100 hours more plus a week, and I just needed somebody that could be in step with me on all that.
No, absolutely. With your background as an architect and developer, does that provide you with some of the business skills that you use to help run the business, the brewery? Or did you have to kind of take a crash course and a lot of the business aspects with regard to specifically operating a tap room?
Both. I mean, if anything, architecture teaches you problem solving, and everything is a challenge. Everything is a project, a puzzle, and you have to navigate that puzzle. So that part, especially with the physical attributes of the property, was super helpful. In all my years, I had not been in the hospitality industry. I'd never been a waiter.
You've been a customer.
I was pretty good at that, but yeah, so I had to learn that background, the behind the scenes, beverage industry, and thankfully located some people that were more knowledgeable and experienced than I am. But yeah, that part was a crash course.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because that's really interesting to me. I have a 2-year-old, and when we had Max a few years ago, I think you'll appreciate this as well. His middle name is Brewer, so he's probably destined for the beer industry as well. But when I had Max, I had never changed a diaper before in my entire life. So I didn't know what I was doing. I was learning as I went. When you got thrown behind the bar, is the first pint that you poured at your own brewery?
Yes. Yes, indeed.
And with regard to serving customers, because you hadn't been behind a bar before, you had no background in hospitality, you didn't necessarily know from a business perspective how it should be. Was that a good thing? And why was it more so a bad thing in some respects? Because when you go into a task not knowing the way things should be, not knowing like the rules, the regulations, the protocols most people follow, did it lend you to do things in a more unique way?
Yeah, that's a great perspective, because I mean, it's like, if you go to a golf lesson and you haven't golfed before, you don't know your bad habits, and you're right. I had a pretty refreshing, open-eyed look at how to do it. I had spent time on the other side of the bar, and I kind of felt like I knew what I liked and didn't like as a consumer. But yeah, it's very different when you're representing your brand from the other side. And to this day, it's a big deal to have a culture with your staff that represents that. Um, so yeah, I had to learn a lot about being on the other side of the bar. And most of my years as in corporate, I was effectively in sales. I mean, we're all selling our product and our services. So interacting with the customers, I loved, and I still do. That's my favorite thing, is old friends, new friends, brew friends, is what we say. Um, so that part I felt very comfortable with and enjoyed and still do. But yeah, the mechanics of the front of the house was all new to me. And heck, I still learn stuff every day.
You sound like you're pretty willing to learn, though.
You have to. I mean, you can't take your foot off the gas in any business, but especially in this industry, because it changes a lot.
Now, looking at, we talked about this earlier, being a home brewer and bringing all your recipes to the table in the brewery. Were you the one doing all the recipe creation, or as you kind of grew, did you add, friends from the homebrew clubs who would help you out with things like that?
And again, that's a big part of why our name is Friendship. In our home brewing club, it was called the Garage Brewers Society, because we mostly brewed in each other's garages. It over time, a group of us kind of gravitated together. We're similar age, similar interests. So effectively 5 of us. And, they helped me pour at festivals for 3 years before we opened. So to answer your question, on day one, uh, I made sure everybody had recipes on it. So, a couple had mine, everybody had representation, want or need the credit. Uh, but again, that's part of the friendship mentality. We make, our slogan is making beer making friends, and that's how we started, and that's how we do it every day.
Now, when you first had those beers on tap, obviously as home brewers, you're essentially brewing for yourself, you're brewing for your immediate friends. Is that the initial approach you took for brewing in the brewery? You would just brew what you knew people enjoyed from your basic circle of friends? Or what point in time did you realize you're going to have to go outside of your comfort zone and try new things to please the guests that were coming in?
Great question. We had an inkling of kind of what we should start with based upon results of doing 3 years on the festival circuit. We had people that had expressed things that they know and like. But you're absolutely right. When you open, you'll know this because you're a home brewer. I'm sure you have one or probably multiple recipes that they're your babies. You're proud of them. They're your passion. We learned early on that, just because I love this particular beer I make doesn't mean it's a big seller. It's you got to kind of put your ego aside and listen to your people, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I like. It matters what the people on the other side of the bar like. And so, yeah, I mean, our biggest selling beer is a very basic beer. It's a blonde ale. So, the quadruple IPA with asparagus that I made isn't going to transfer to everyday sales. And at the end of the day, we have to sell beer. But yeah,
How did that beer with asparagus come out, by the way?
of course, I'm speaking in jest, but
Oh man, you never know these days, Brian. I had to at least ask.
there was a beer at ABF a couple years ago called Spear Beer, and it wasn't as terrible as it sounds. Um, but yeah, and it's funny because on day one when we opened, we had 6 taps, 6 handles. That's the best we could do. Today we have 30. 30 active handles of our beer.
Wow.
Including sours, including a cider. But yeah, we opened with 6. We did the best we could. Lots of tweaking, as you would guess. You have to learn your system. You have to learn your schedule. You have to learn your efficiencies on ingredients, and a lot. It's a whole lot more than just, man, I'm gonna open a brewery. You got to really dig in. And but again, I'm super thankful for having great friends. Our team is amazing, and also having a great community. We had and still have enjoy, amazing support from our immediate community and our region. And that's why we do it. We can't do without them.
when you first opened the brewery, you mentioned that the blonde ale is your best-selling ale, your best-selling beer. Were you finding that there was a huge educational component in getting your local community excited about your beers, and they were just more excited about the ones that were just more basic and more approachable? Or what was the current state of craft beer like and the average, consumer craft knowledge when you first opened your doors?
Well, as
Because
you know,
you are close to St. Louis and you're in the shadows of some larger brewers there, so to speak.
yeah, there's a big guy right down the road, and they have a pretty strong marketing arm. Yeah, we felt like a big part of our job was to educate, our beer community. Um, we had to start with some simple, approachable beers. You know, Back then it was not common to have a dozen people walk in and order a Bud Light. Well, we're a brewery. We don't have that. We have this, and we hope you like it. Um, so yeah, we did that. We kept some standbys, but because we're all home brewers at heart, we still had to have some just whimsical beers on tap. Just beers because we love them. They're fun. They're different. They're creative, and you know, a big enough part of the bell curve of our customers appreciate that they did well too. But at the end of the day, this particular market, every neighborhood is different. Ours, we have to have a light lager, we have to have a light ale, a Heffy, a brown ale, and then one of our multiple rotations of IPA. Those are the bread and butter. And beyond that, thankfully, we can do a lot of things now. On day one, we could not have from a production standpoint, but also because I don't think my local beer community was really ready to embrace some of those styles.
And it sounds like you've done a pretty good job of educating them and getting them ready to embrace more unique styles over time.
Well, I mean, it's fun. I mean, drinking beer is the best. The second best is talking about beer. So, that's been fun. We've had a lot of fun with it. Thankfully, a lot of our customer base, again, they're open minded. They want to learn. They want to try new things, and sometimes they don't. But it's been really fun to watch the expansion of the collective palate of our people, and especially some of our friends that were diehard light lager drinkers. I just have to chuckle every time they come in and want a Belgian quad. So it's great.
Just make sure you leave the asparagus on the side for that one.
Yeah, that's a side dish. Yeah.
So how big is your facility? How many barrels?
Where we are now is it's not very big. It's a 5-barrel hot side with 10 barrel fermenters, and briefly we'll touch on our second location if you let me.
Love to.
We ran out of production space in year one. By month 9, we were out of room. So we have rented space at another local brewery for a while, and that's helped, but it still is a far cry from giving us the amount of production we need. So just real briefly, we bought a large building nearby and a 15-barrel, 30-barrel fermenter system that's in place. We're doing the build out on that property now. Canning line, fooders, and it also distilling, so it'll be a brewstillery. But that's next chapter. This particular location, I did what most guys do. I bought what I felt like I could afford at the time. I had a budget. I stuck to it. Would I rather had a 7-barrel, 10-barrel? Yeah.
Sure.
But I did what a lot of folks in this industry or any can't do is I opened up with no debt. I was able to just eke it out, a lot of sweat equity, pretty well emptied my 401k. And so I bought what I could buy with what I had. I didn't really want to stick my neck out terribly far. Our little 5-barrel, we have beat it to death for 5 years, and it still is a little trooper. But yeah, we're very, very lucky and thankful that we can take it to a next bigger level.
Will you keep the original location open, or will you move everything over to the new place?
No, the original location is my baby. I spent so much time here. It's a neat old historic building. We're located well. We've got a whole city block for an outdoor space, outdoor bar. yeah, this is always the mothership, but we've totally maxed out production, parking. Our kitchen is maxed out, so the other is the next logical step. So yeah, it's exciting.
Your journey is fascinating, Brian, because you went from essentially being an architect, you became a home brewer, you decided to open the brewery. Now you're going to be an owner of two different locations, which is a challenge in itself, running two different, tap rooms. But you're adding that distillery component as well. Now I have to ask, do you have any experience distilling at all? Or where did that idea come from to add that into the business model?
Well, the first thing I'll say is, and by the way, 2 days ago we launched seltzer for the first time. So my answer to both is, you listen to your customers. Every day I walk the floor, I touch every table, I listen.
Love it.
And, but yes, there is a personal curiosity and fascination with me. I'm not a big spirits guy, but I've learned from my customers, some of them are very, very serious about their bourbon or very, very serious about their rum, and they're nice enough to share with me. I've really learned to appreciate that craft marketplace. So yeah, the answer is, we feel like it's a way for us to grow our footprint, to better serve our community, and to keep us engaged. I'm not happy, and nor are my people, if we don't have a new challenge. We don't want to sit still on what we are. We want to be bigger and better things, tomorrow. So, that's the answer is we just want to be bigger and better. And we think that's, a prudent way to expand our marketplace.
Is at any point in time your goal to reduce your hours from 80 hours a week?
Absolutely. Yeah. very, very much so.
So it sounds like you keep adding things to your plate though, Brian, like with regard to the team that you have right now, do you strictly hire friends to join the staff at Friendship, or have you had to kind of hire outside of your immediate circle?
Oh, early on, we figured that we had to go get the best, regardless if they were our friends or not. Our core group is still our group of friends, including my business partner. He's a great friend. My head brewer is a great friend. My 5 assistant brewers are great friends. But I'll harken back to my head brewer. We poached him. He's an amazing head brewer. My guys all had day jobs. So we figured out early on that we weren't brewing as much or as well as we needed to. So I did go hire an external head brewer that now oversees all our operations and cellaring and coordinates all my homebrew buddies. Because that's the way to get bigger and better. And then same with management and of course, your support staff, our bartenders, some are still friends. And then, sometimes we just have to go out into the world and find people that are, we hope, a good fit.
So has anything changed with regard to your initial mission when you first started?
And I'm going to stick your head in here, David. My brewer did, or my business partner did show up, and his last name, just so you know, Andrew, is Brewer. So, hello, Andrew.
Nice to meet you, David. I read about you a little bit on the website earlier today. If I'm not mistaken, you're the fellow who owned the hardware store while the homebrewers used to hang out.
I did, yes, indeed.
Yeah, so
that was fun too.
So that's.
And was that where you two met?
Yeah, effectively that, and at the homebrew meetings.
The homebrew club.
Yeah, the club. But like I said, the club kind of, distilled itself down to, the group of friends that are very instrumental here at the brewery.
And David, because you're in the picture now, I have to ask, do you still run the hardware shop that you did back when you met, or when did you transition outward?
I do not anymore. I end up closing that store, and I'm focusing much more on this business here now.
Is this an avenue you ever thought you'd pursue?
I had been interested in it before. So yeah, I had thought of it in the past, particularly once I got involved with the homebrew community and realized it was how much of a community it was and how neat that was, and just the camaraderie with the brewers and everything. So no, I think it's a great business. I like to, when I travel, I'm usually representing Friendship, but people will often, it's a good way for me to connect with younger folks who are who love beer, and so I can talk to a whole lot of people now that I have avenues to talk to people, which is just a lot more fun when I travel and do things.
Absolutely. So were you around in the days when the initial build out happened?
I was around. Yeah, I wasn't involved at the time. In fact, Brian worked for me at the store when he was kind of in between things going on here, so he helped me at the store at that time. That's where I got to know him better.
He was one of the guys that was laughing at me and thinking I was crazy, but
that's not true at all.
But he hung in there.
Well, I've got a question for you both, and I'm curious how you both take it. Like, look in the past 5 years. So you're about to celebrate your 5th anniversary in July. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
What are some of the challenges that you have faced? Running a brewery with some of your closest friends. Have there been those challenges that you didn't expect that have caused struggle, or you to rethink things at any point during the life cycle?
Absolutely, sure. No, I've had, we parted ways with my initial college friend, and then I had another investor that was part of our business for a little while, and that became very caustic and problematic, and that was essentially a divorce. And that's when I asked David if he would like to come and get involved and help, and thankfully we, like any business, anything in life, you go over the speed bumps, but you keep driving, and you get to where you want to go.
And speaking of which, speed bumps has been quite an interesting year. How has the pandemic treated you and everyone in the community in Wentzville?
Thanks for asking. We are in a county that was not terribly restrictive. We did have a 45-day period where we were only able to do sales to go, and we did okay. We did a lot of crowlers and a lot of growlers, and the worst part is we had to sit down a majority of our staff. We went from 30 people to 6 people or something like that, and that hurts us because our people we love our employees. They're like family. So that was disheartening. Business wise, with a vastly reduced payroll, our income was lesser, but we kind of hung in there. We did okay, not great. And then when the restrictions were lightened, I mentioned that we have a city block sized outdoor area. That was a rock star. That was such a great opportunity for us because, people would come here and say, can we have 6 feet? I can give you 60 feet. You can, we can spread you out like crazy. So, we did pretty darn well considering, and still do, with that opportunity that we can help people have whatever degree of comfort they're looking for, and that varies widely.
Had you taken advantage of your outdoor space much prior to COVID?
We did, but I won't dare take credit for it. It was dumb luck. But the autumn before COVID, we launched a big expansion out there. We added a big pavilion, an outdoor bar, a tent. It just so happened that was in place. So we were super fortunate that was there for us, and it obviously helped a lot.
I wanted to add into the comment about losing employees and how important they were to us. The interesting thing was, and this probably happened in a lot of breweries, but during that time period, we also had our good customers and regular customers coming in and offering to pay into a fund to help those who were out of work. So they gave a lot of money to our employees just because they wanted to help them out, which is, I think, again, it's kind of a testament to the community aspect.
No, that's amazing. I mean, I think it really speaks to your mission of just putting friendship behind everything.
Yeah, they did that independently. We didn't ask them to. One of our great regulars approached David and I one day and handed us an envelope with a pretty large amount of money in it and said, "This is for your people. Give this to your people." And how can you not love that? So it's great.
I think that's a testament of what you've truly built when you have a customer who knows you more than just the person behind the bar, but as the owner, as the person, as an actual friend. That's when you truly build those relationships that last longer than just a pint of beer.
And that is the most gratifying part for me personally is, not only have I met amazing friends who are truly friends now and like family that I would never have met if not for this place. But we've also launched, I forget this year, our friends become friends. Our people that meet here, do they go on vacation together? We've had, I think, 6 marriages that resulted in people having met here. I mean, it's just fun. It's just great, and that's what makes those hours of paperwork and whatnot worthwhile is smiling faces and people enjoying themselves. Hopefully making our little piece of the world a better place.
No, I absolutely love it.
Another thing to add to that, I think, is that Brian had mentioned that we had kind of done some expansion to the patio. We had a pavilion put up in the tent, but we had not really fully developed that space at the time. And the bar was there, but it wasn't quite usable yet. So during that downtime, when a lot of our customers were out of work anyway because of what they were doing, they would actually come over and help us with that outside space and just donate their time to make this place better, and because they really view it as their space as well. So they did a whole lot to put in like rail fence around our property and do some work on the bar, help us get roofs on things. So they were very instrumental in helping us, get ready for when we were eventually able to open again. And that was cool. And they just feel a real ownership with us and a real part of it.
No, that's absolutely fantastic. Were you the first brewery in Wentzville proper?
Yes. Yeah. We are. Then, there's not a whole lot in our county. It's grown. I think there's about 10 now or 12. But yeah, we are the first in Wentzville, and I guess with our other location, we're the first and the second in Wentzville. But yeah, and I'm a hometown kid. I grew up here, so that helped. People knew who I was, and we're the default location for every high school reunion, and that's all great. And I couldn't have had that to that level if I would have located somewhere else. And again, that's great because I personally get to have, a reunion with old friends every week, and it's just, again, very gratifying. I'm very thankful.
No, I love it, Brian. So when's your new location open?
Oh, well, that's a dangerous question.
Well, you have to have a number in your head because
Yeah.
every brewery owner says essentially take how long you think it's going to take and multiply it by 3. I've heard that countless times. What's your timeline? Kind of like.
Same with your budget. We're working primarily right now to get production online there. So we're hoping maybe July-ish to make beer. The distillery, I think, would be a little bit behind that. And then to finish out the space so that we have our public area open would be more closer to the end of the year. And it's hard to say a particular date because there are some variables in there that we can't control. But, we hope so. I mean, we're real excited about it. The community's excited about it. We need it. We need it from a production standpoint. And we've got a lot of great plans for the space with, bigger gatherings and bigger crowds and big outdoor space, all the above. So, yeah, meetings. So yeah, it's a lot of work to do. We're in the part of the build out now that's not fun. We're jackhammering concrete, and
you're doing it all by yourself once again, or are you bringing in your friends to help?
Well, we're using mostly contractors this time. I was 8 years younger the last time, and we're both pretty busy just doing the other stuff. So this is a more traditional construction project. And
something tells me your friends probably don't miss that part of the getting the brewery ready to open process.
They love helping, but yeah, I don't think they want to work quite as hard as we did the first time, and nor do I. But no, it's real fun, and it's exciting to do the growth. A little scary because who knows what's around the corner any given day. But we decided that we have to approach it like we're going forward regardless. whatever is around the corner, whatever our economy and our country is going to do, we're going to charge. We want to be ready for whatever it is. And, there's an other side to all this, and we're going to approach it like that.
No, I absolutely love it, because what you're doing is following through even more in your initial mission. You're creating a place where more friendships can be built. And what's the best friendship but one built around craft beer? So
Right.
I'm excited to visit someday. I love what you've created. Thanks for sharing your story with us today, and I hope to share a pint someday.
Well,
cheers, Brian.
I hope you do. Cheers to you.
No, I think we will someday. Back in a normal time when traveling is a thing again. I enjoy the Missouri area, so expect to see me on an adventure at some point in my life. Just like you had those beautiful 400 beer trips, I expect to make it out there at some point.
Well, your tab's on us, so come see us.
I appreciate that. Cheers. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.